Okay, let's go right on time. Good morning,
Okay.
Jack. It's good evening for all of us, and it's wonderful to see you all nice, bright and early, or a little later in the evening, but everyone's looking really nice and bright. So, we have Jack Gantos with us today, and a lot of you who have been seeing his poster would know that he is an awesome author. Uh, he has got a bucket full or a sack full of awards. And he has written some wonderful characters which have developed into series like Rotten Ralph, and we have Joey Pigza. And I personally, which I just told Jack about, that I have finished whole in my life. So, I am not going to waste any time. And the first thing that I would like to ask Jack is let's zip through our chat. Or rather, shall we talk about Zippy? Rest in peace, Zippy. Now, Jack, I want to know, did it really happen? Did you actually drop that roach down? And the aftermath, the naked hide and stroll, you have to tell us about that, please.
Well, first off, thank you so much for inviting me. Um, Sitting in the front parlor in Boston and speaking all the way to India live, it just seems miraculous, doesn't it? It's just so wonderful to bring us all together. And everybody here, of course, is here because there's a certain love of literature, there's a certain love of story, and there's a tradition. There's an Indian tradition of great storytelling, and there's a Western tradition over here of great storytelling. So we have what I always think is more in common than not in common. We always have humanity between us and storytelling between us and characters and settings and plots and action. All of these aspects come together in all of your stories and all of my stories. So whether you are in the state next door or you're across the ocean, we still have a heart and have a soul and have a mind and have creativity. And the other thing that we all want, which maybe many of you want, is your name on a book. Wouldn't you love to walk into a bookstore someday and there's your name on a book? You would feel really good about that. So, the question that was just posed to me about Zippy the Roach, was that real? So, here's the setup. Okay. Now, if you're thinking of the story, right, and you're thinking beginning, middle, end, problem, action, solution. So, Zippy. This will only take a minute, but it's pretty graphic. So, my sister and I were arguing. We always had a lot of arguments back and forth. Her bedroom was across from my bedroom, and we would just call each other names back and forth, and we would do silly things back and forth. And one day my sister said to me, I'm sick and tired of all this bickering. She said, let's call a truce, no more bickering. And I said, oh, that's such a great idea. Let's be really nice. Let's try and be human beings to each other instead of adversaries. And so she said, great. But she said, we have to shake on it. And she said, and whoever is mean to the other person first has to suffer a punishment. And I said, oh, yeah, make it a great punishment. And she said, okay, I've got it. She said, whoever is mean to the other person first has to take off all their clothes and run naked around the outside of the house. And I said, oh, well, I'll never be mean to you again because I couldn't possibly suffer through public nudity because I like keeping all my clothes on all the time. And she said, great, we'll get along fine. And we did. It changed my life. I remember the next day I woke up and I was like, I love my sister. I love her. She's so wonderful. She's so nice. I must do nice things for her. So right away, I went on a campaign to try and be nice to her. I ironed her clothing. She didn't say anything. I fed her fish. She didn't say anything. I cleaned her room. She didn't even say thank you. And I was getting really, really sort of annoyed. I'm like, I am being so nice, so thoughtful, so brotherly, and she won't even say anything. In fact, when I asked her about it, she said, "So what?" And I was like, oh. I thought, you know what? I woke up one day and I thought, I don't think I really want to be nice to my sister. But
Why?
I didn't want to suffer the wicked punishment, but I got carried away. So I had this little cockroach collection, this insect. I took one. Its name was Zippy because I used to take nail polish and write them on the back of the cockroaches and play with them and write. So I snuck into my sister's room when she was sleeping, and she sleeps with her mouth wide open. And I leaned over and I dropped the cockroach into her mouth. And I turned and I ran out of the room. And then I listened, and it was wonderful. Oh my God, it was so sensational. All I could hear was her going, and then I heard a shoe go whack, splat. And I was like, oh, not good for Zippy, you know. So I'm laughing in my room thinking, this is the greatest thing I've ever done to my sister. And then she comes in and she says, there's only one person in this house who is mean enough, who is ugly enough, who is rude enough to do what just happened to me. And I said, that's right, that would be me. She said, now you have to suffer the wicked punishment. And I was like, oh, I forgot about the punishment. She said, that's right. Take off all your clothes and run naked around the house, outside. So I said, I can't do that. I cannot do that. She said, well, I'll just tell Dad that you dropped a roach in my mouth and he'll kill you. I said, oh, I'd rather be alive. So I said, okay, give me a minute. Went into my bedroom. I took off all my clothes and I yelled out, ready. And then she opened the front door and I ran out the front door naked. And as fast as a human being can run, I ran screaming around the house. I get back to the front door, click, she's locked the front door. I'm like, let me in. She's like, no, through the window. And I run around to the back door and click, she's locked the back door. And now a very naked boy is trapped outside. I have no idea what to do. And my eyes are popping out of my head. And I'm absolutely terrified because I don't like to be naked. And I don't even like to be naked indoors, much less outdoors in front of all the neighbors. And so I'm running around crazy, and I look next door at the house next door, and there's some laundry hanging on the line. So I run over there nakedly, grabbing the laundry off of the line, when the woman comes out and goes, what are you, some kind of naked nut? And I'm like, ah, I scream, I turn around, I come back, and I dive into some bushes in front of the house. And I stay there all day, covering myself with little leaves, licking a leaf and sticking it on myself, licking another leaf, sticking it on myself, and covering up until finally my father comes on. My father's pulling the car up the driveway when his naked son jumps out of a bush in front of the car. My father hits the brakes and he comes out, and I'm crying. I'm just weeping. And he goes, what is wrong with you? I said, she is so mean. She is so wicked. She's the meanest sister in the world. And my father said, well, why? What happened? I said, she locked me naked out of the house. He said, how'd that happen? So I said, well, I dropped a cockroach in her mouth and so on and so on. And I told him the whole story. And he just looked at me and he said, you did that to your sister? I said, yes. And he said, well, I would have locked you naked out of the house too. He said, now get in the house and get some clothes on. You're embarrassing me out here. And then I did. I got my clothes back on. I was so happy. And then I hear, Jack, get in the living room this instant. So I go down, and there's my mother, and there's my father, and there's my smiling sister. And my father goes, apologize to your sister, which I did. And then I went back to my room, my bedroom, and I got my journal, This is my very first journal, my child journal. I got my journal and I wrote it down inside this book right here. And I said to myself, it was worth it all. I got a great story out of it. So that's the kind of kid I was. So I was always kind of getting into a little bit of trouble, but then taking that trouble. And then when I was writing about it in my journal, then I could kind of begin to massage it, begin to try and bring some structure to it. Now, when I was young, I did not know much about structure. I could tell a story and I could see a story. And my father was a good storyteller. My mother was a good storyteller. And so we just kind of basically knew beginning, middle, and end. But then later on, when I started to try and write books, then I realized, all the bits and pieces that go into a story. And you have to kind of think a little bit like a writer. One, it's content, what happened. So we know that that's 50% of a story. Half of a story is going to be action. Me dropping a roach, running around, getting trapped. That's half of the story. But the other half, and this is the half that makes a good writer different from a not so good writer. The emotions on the inside of the character. So if the character has no emotions and no thoughtfulness, then you're missing the story whatsoever. Because the story is not about the action. The story is always about how the character responds to the action. And so one of the things that we're always looking for in a good story is the human experience. How has the character been changed by the action? What has the character learned by the action? And so you have to make sure that when you're writing your stories, you get the action, which holds the whole story together, beginning, middle, end. Beginning, the truce with my sister, the middle, the action, and then the end, having to apologize and then writing it all down. So you have that. That's easy to figure out. But then you have to go to the detail work and moment by moment, what's going on? What's the action? What's the feeling? What's the action? What's the feeling? And you're like a camera in your own life, dollying out to see what's going on outside, and then dollying in to see what's in the mind, what's in the heart, what's in the soul. And that's when you really polish up a story. Now, for me, the other thing I'll tell you, that when I tell students this, because I go to schools all the time and I talk and I teach, and I tell students this at the end. So they all like the story, right? I can tell story after story after story and break them down into bits and pieces. And then I tell them, then there's rewriting involved. There's polishing a story involved. There's the art of making a story great with language. So when I write a story, I don't just write it once. I don't just write it twice. I don't just write it 3 times. I probably write every story about 50 times. At least 50. So you have to realize that writing a story is like creating a great painting. You don't just stand in front of the canvas, pull out a palette, and just paint it all up. You're always massaging it, changing it, toning it, shaping it, getting it just right. Every word, every sentence, every bit of pacing in the story. And you read it over and over, and you're looking for the little gaps and the little holes in the story that the reader is going to go, hey, wait a minute. I don't understand how the character felt this way once, and now the character feels this way. What is the transition? You, the writer, have to build those transitions in so the reader can follow everything through the story. So you have to just take it easy, take it a little bit slow, and get it right. The rewriting is where writers are made. Every writer will tell you that.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack. That was very insightful. And like you're right, it's stories that join us across the globe, across boundaries, stories that transcend boundaries, I would say. And it's interesting how the best storytellers have been people like who can actually emote the story. So you're absolutely right there. And I hope we shall take that as a very important message. I think we have our young friends here who want to ask you a few things. The
Yeah.
first of them is Arya. So, could you unmute Arya, please?
Hi, I'm Arya.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. I just finished A Hole in My Life a few days back when I was homesick. And
Yes.
my question to you would be, so 40 US states have sued Meta, the parent company for Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, which has been considered responsible for the youth mental health crisis. So my question is, are you happy with that, with the suing?
Am I happy with the suing?
I believe
No.
what Arya was trying to emphasize was that, the social media has taken away a lot of readers.
Oh.
And
Oh.
I am not trying a horror story here. We are having genuine power cuts,
It's okay.
which is, honestly, I'm not doing a Halloween thing along with your event. It's just power cuts. But thankfully, we do have backup, so it's okay. So I think what Arya wanted to emphasize on that, considering the social media and the, young people going on social media so much, has affected the reading capacity of individuals. So do you think, and it has affected the mental health, and so the entire concept, and which has come when they have sued Meta, is majorly that the content is addictive. So are you happy with bringing this forward?
I think we have a push pull on this. Like welcome back. So the push pull in the argument is, even if there is social media, you are choosing to join it. So who is responsible? If you buy a car and then you get in an accident, is it the car's fault? But no, you chose to drive the car. So when I have my phone on or when I have my computer on, I can either choose to be involved with social media or not. It's up to me. And I think that puts you in this center point, a pivot point. So a lot of times people say, they did this to me. Did they? Or did you choose to join in? And that's the argument that Meta is making. We are just here, you come to us. Now, if they somehow come to you, if they start putting a camera in your house, that's a whole different thing. That's more like 1984. That's a little bit like Fahrenheit 451. Now we're getting a little bit different. They're being aggressive. But I think what young people have to realize is they have a personal responsibility as well to turn it off. Say goodbye, Meta. Goodbye, Mr. Zuckerberg. Goodbye. I don't go on many of those sites. I just don't need them.
This reminds me of what you wrote in Hole in My Life, where you said that, it was finally when you owned up to your mistake, that guilt. And before that, there was one entire paragraph where you said that you tried to blame everybody except take the blame yourself, but you finally came to that point. So I guess, yes, we do have the option of turning it off. So let's hope we do that.